That was amazing. Good evening, everyone. It is an honor to be here tonight. My name is Jonathan Yubi. It is my pleasure to introduce Shirley Kaplan. During my first conversation with Shirley, she dropped so many wonderful nuggets of wisdom that I was transported back to my childhood, eagerly scooping up candy from a busted backyard birthday party pinata. Yes, I'm comparing Shirley's wisdom to candy, but I assure you that is the most flattering comparison I can make. Shirley has lived life that defies any single label. She's founded the Obie Award-winning paper bag players. She studied painting in Paris as a teenager after her first New York exhibition earned her a scholarship. She has worked alongside artists, actors, and rock musicians. She brought art into schools during the Vietnam War era, and her early work with the Connecticut Commission on the Arts, Project Create, was part of the basis for one of the first community art projects in the United States. After 42 years at Clara Lemlich, she retired in 2016. Though retired seems like a loose term for someone who, at 94, still hosts salons where artists gather to share their work. Throughout it all, she has moved through the world with a particular kind of boldness. As she put it, dashing into the unknown is part of education. I'd argue it's also been the through line of her life. What strikes me most about Shirley is her philosophy towards people. She doesn't try to shape others, she trusts them. As she told me about one of her many accomplished former students, she said, "I didn't teach her. She came that way. People come the way they are." That kind of generosity, that deep belief in others, is rare, and it has clearly left a mark. She remains close with many former students to this day, still learning from them as much as they once learned from her. When I asked Shirley to reflect on her long and eventful life, she didn't list her achievements. She just spoke of remarkable people. That's what she collected along the way, and tonight, I think the feeling is mutual. Please join me in welcoming this evening's honoree, Shirley Kaplan.
It's on? Can you hear me? Okay. Hi. I wanted to say first that Muhammad Ali, when he was at Harvard as a guest, was asked by somebody in the audience, "What, write us a poem, read from your poem." And he said, "We, you, me, you." And I think I misquoted already. But I think the truth, I was very touched because it's really become that in my life, that I've connected to people in some way that changed my life right from the beginning. My mother had TB the first years of my life, so I didn't see her much at all. She was in a hospital in Wallingford. My father, who came over here as an immigrant from Poland, who was 10 years old, and his relatives had given him a job in some factory, and they forgot to say they had no bed, so he slept on the kitchen table. Not an unusual story in those days. He went down to the Bowery, where they used to come and look for help, and some man with a farm took him in, and he stayed there till he was 18. I wanted to mention that because coming from different backgrounds, all of us, I got really interested in what made us different and what we had that was connecting us. And my first experience was my mother had come home and gave me tap lessons. I was on my toes too early. Singing, I wasn't much of a singer. But they brought a lot of art materials. And they sent me to a local city summer program. And we drew and drew and drew. And I, who loved Disney and loved cartooning, came home and my mother said, "That's a perfect pig." I said, "What?" She said, "You've drawn a perfect pig. You've got to go study art." So that's not too aesthetic a story, but from there on I went to Silvermine Guild in Connecticut, where my father's farm was nearby. I was the youngest student they had. I was scared to death, but they gave me a lot of paint, and I worked with Gail Simon, Reverend Arthur, and a wonderful man who started cabarets there, called John Vassos. And by then I was like 15, 16. And I got an apprenticeship at the Westport Country Playhouse as an apprentice to a man called Larry Goldwasser, who loved to do sets for Victorian times. And besides a pig, I could really draw portraits. So I stayed there that summer, and I learned a lot, and I met a lot of people. And through these early years, opposite of the way I was raised, I learned what blue cheese was, why people drank wine, what about different people's way of living. And I have to warn you here that my dates might be very funky. I drove my family crazy and told me I needed notes. I did. But I want to say that there was something about Oliver Sacks that moved me beyond belief when I got older. And as I tell you what I did in education, I want you sort of to stay with me in that. The idea that our memory and our experience leads to our courage and our kindness. And the memory leads to action. And there's nobody in this room I can bet you $5. I have it down here. I can bet that there's nobody here that hasn't marched, written a letter, and cared about everything in our country that we care about. And also building spiritual strength, which is what we all really need. And I just wanted to mention that. I'm going to jump around, so forgive me. I'm 94. So it's a living miracle. I'm a living miracle. So after that little experience at the art place and at the Playhouse, I went to New York because somebody offered me a show on 57th Street. And my father and the Herald Tribune, they wrote, "Farmer's daughter shows on 57th Street. He brings paintings in his cow truck." That was another day. And a woman, I forgot her name now, but the critic for the Herald Tribune was very kind to me. And I got a lot of very good results from it. It was my first professional experience to be around a street with other painters, like many of them. We had that in Silvermine, but many, many painters at different galleries. And it changed my life because a man named Richard Guggenheimer, who was an art philosopher at a college called Briarcliff, came and offered me a scholarship. So coming from a farm, going to Briarcliff College, I don't know if anybody of you know this in here, but it was a total economic change. It was much more like a finishing school almost. And I learned a lot there. I learned there were other kinds of people besides the people I knew already. And from that I got another scholarship. The best part of Briarcliff for me was the intelligence of the teachers who would come. It was kind of a version of community college, which I'm a big backer for. I mean, I think we should have shop classes, community colleges. I mean, we should serve what our needs are. But I'm not going to preach much. You can hope. But from Briarcliff, I was offered another grant, and the reason I like Briarcliff is I could use the art studio anytime I wanted. And the only request they had was that on the weekends, when Harvard, Yale, and Princeton came to this women's college, Best, I do not waltz a little hobby in my paint clothes. So I learned a little sociological information there. And I did, and I got another scholarship. This one got me to Paris. And I'll talk a little bit about Paris. At a very active time, it was the end of the war. I was not astute or intelligent enough to absorb how unique that was. And I got there and I looked for studios, and what I found was a studio that was filled with male painters. By the way, they called me a girl painter in the review. So, what can we say? But male painters who did not want. I was with another girl, a woman from Sarah, from Berkeley, and they didn't want us in the studio. They said, no, women don't come in here. It was part of the Grand Chaumière. And then they didn't come up for us. It's a part of Paris that's unbelievable. And all these painters and different people are walking around, eating together, painting in their studios. And at night and other times, they'd go to the Select, which was a cafe, across from the Dome. And painters would be there. And the conversation was so shocking and wonderful to me, and the morals, the morality was so different, and the art was so different, that I was absolutely enchanted. And after a while, I became friends with the people in the studio, and we would paint at night. There was free classes with a sculptor named Sackton, and he would just go around and say, a little more, that was his favorite. Fruit, right away. But it was all free, and we all went to do it for nothing. And it was much cheaper there, believe me. And the Dome was filled with, I saw John Betty, I saw his brother, I saw different people. I really wanted to see Alice Tovis, but all I saw was her partner crossing the street with Montparnasse. But that satisfied me a great deal. And little by little, I made a life in Paris. And I met a wonderful painter, and some of you I hope will know his name. If not, you can look him up in Google. He's not recognized much except by painters. The Cooney and Klein really loved him and understood him, and he stayed with him a lot and watched his painting. And for years I watched Earl paint the same portrait of himself and gladiolas. And he was really wonderful. I had a companion or a friend. He'd say, does he have a kitchen baby? Can we cook a chicken? He was very lively, very empathetic, and he was much older than me. He was like 65, I was probably around 20. You can imagine. Meeting someone like that, very nice, who had come from abstract expressionism, which he did not do at all, to his own voice. And that's what I loved about Oliver Sacks. I love reading about him and getting to know all that, because he listened to the soul of people. And if you play a song, if any of you have ever worked in halfway houses or daycares, people recognize their song. It's like the singers that we just had. It's remarkable. It's in our genes. And education is in our genes. And science and all this stuff that's coming up is in our genes. And we hope to God I has a gene. Because we want to get some emotional life going. I'm going to stop. She called me because I don't make it too long, but my family insists. Anyway, the end is that I came back to America, and I had another show. And I went to Sarah Lawrence College. I had to end when I came. I went to Sarah Lawrence because Alice Oachman, who's the president, and Will Leach, and Dan Earl, and it was a very intense intellectual time. Alice Paley, Jane, I mean, ridiculous, wonderful. Anyway, read Oliver Sacks, speak up, and my education is based on what you feel. If you feel, believe it, move on it, learn about it, discard it. But don't stop. I just want to end with a 4-line song from my father that I wrote in a thing called Tibetan Cowboy. I lived the only kind of life I could. I made my way, knock on wood, knock on wood, gone so gelt. I've got life under my belt.